You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
What's up, Coaches Nation? This is Dr. Sheri with another episode of the Coach's Journey podcast, and I'm here with two co-hosts today. So special. We have Daniel Fernandes and we have Faisal Ensaun. Both are leaders. Well, we're all leaders of the Coaching Mastery community. And today we have the topic around what is the number one rule that you need to know as a coach for marketing, for successful marketing, because anybody can market, but how do we actually do it successfully where it grows the business? We're so excited to be able to unpack this for you today.
Yeah, this is such an important topic because we all come with preconceived notions, and a lot of those notions are based on assumptions or mistakes in thinking around the concept of marketing. So I'm really excited to talk with all three of us today around this topic. So this is going to be a really good discussion.
Me too. I'm so excited about this. And I was actually thinking about starting this with a little bit of poo-pooing on the marketing industry. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
As long as you say poo-pooing again.
I like that term. Before I jump in, for those who are in our community, or even if you're, especially those who are in our community and you're listening to this live or watching this live, we have our masterclass this coming week on Monday, December 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you want access to that, just share hashtag marketing in all team. We'll give you access to that link. You do need to register, but it's a 2-hour live free masterclass for you as a bonus to be. Just because you're part of our community, you're going to gain a lot out of it. You're going to understand exactly what to focus on when it comes to your marketing as a coach, which will be very different from what others will do in marketing. There will be some common principles, but what we're going to go through will be very unique, and you're going to gain a lot. And it's going to give you a starting point to get your next 5 clients. We're so excited to have you there, but I do want to get started with this. Let's start with the poo-poo.
Faisal, one more thing. If you're listening to this,
you don't want to let me poo-poo? What's going on?
Well, poo-poos are very real for me having a toddler. But if you're listening to this on a platform that is not Facebook, if you're on a podcast, you can also go to our website, coachingmasterycommunity.com, and click on register for masterclass. And if it might be the masterclass one, depending when you're seeing this. If you're seeing it later on, it might be a different one. But those masterclasses are super powerful. Our masterclass this Monday is on marketing, and we're talking about that today in the podcast. So let's get going. You can start poo-pooing now, Faisal.
Before I do that, even if you've missed it, reach out to us. You should have a link underneath this video or audio or our website. Definitely reach out to us because we usually share the recording with our members. You just have to join our community, and we'll be happy to share that with you. So you will gain a lot out of it, even if you've missed it. So the poo-pooing part, let's start with that. And I'll share. I started coaching, and I was about 30 when I started coaching. So when I started out, it started with the marketing world. I think the messaging works. The messaging was this way. If you jump into a path like this, coaching path, you will make about 6-figure in 1 year. And even though it got me excited from that perspective, it didn't make sense from a career development perspective. And we'll go into that in a little bit. But a lot of the marketing messaging, when you go to the bigger programs, courses for coaches, consultants, for all these, they know that attracts people, so they frame it as that. But it changes the motivations. It changes the intentions that coaches have. They stop to look at this as a long-term path. As soon as they say that, you're expecting that you're going to get paid clients in about 3 months, 6 months, which not only are we think that's, first of all, that's an unethical claim to make without understanding where the coaches are in their path. But actually, we're not the only ones who are cracking down on this. What is it? FTC?
FTC. We just were notified 2 days ago by our marketing coach that the FTC has been lodging some pretty hefty lawsuits against marketers for making allegations and claims on income potential in lots of different fields, but coaching is not getting bypassed on this. So at Coaching Mastery Community, we are very intentional. Let's be real, let's be honest, and let's talk about how this really works. We don't pursue or we don't talk about coaching as this quick, easy, fast side hustle where you can all of a sudden become a millionaire next month because you've just added a coaching piece to whatever you're doing. That's not how we approach coaching. And so we're going to unpack and talk a little bit about the marketing piece around actually building a profitable and sustainable coaching business. One that's going to be around.
Can I build on that? Because like something you said just triggered for me. Like coaching is a career, right? It's not just a task on your to-do list, right? And so if you think about every other career that we think about, I was an engineer, for example, and I had a career path, and my career path involved different types of career skills, different types of career choices, and a long-term growth. When I first started as an engineer, I was making a very small amount of money. As my career progressed, I made more because I learned how to become more valuable. And I probably wasn't a great enough negotiator. I could have made more, but in that world, I'm building a career over time, building up what I can charge through experience and through confidence and through navigating that career path. And that's one of the things in the coaching industry that's really hard, because you think, based on the marketing that's out there, hey, I'm going to start this career at the place where I normally would expect to be in 10 years. And like, I'm going to get that in 3 months, and I'm going to have all these clients, and it's going to be so much better, and I have such a flexible lifestyle. Because you're not thinking about this as a career, you don't factor in that career development path and being intentional about how to build that career. Yeah, you can build it faster. There's ways to do it. One of the ways is to have a community of people that are helping you, because one of the things in my career I've had is a network of professionals around myself the entire time in my corporate career, right? And that was a factor in how I grew. So one of the things now I'm doing is I have coaches around me all the time, coaches on that path. And Sheri and Faisal are some of those coaches. People in our community are some of those coaches. But this is not something that coaches think about. It's like, I'm going to get there and be sustainable super fast. And you need to be thinking much longer term than this quarter or sometimes even this year. Like, you could get traction this year, this quarter. It's possible, but it's not common to go really, really fast, because people are thinking about this as a get quick rich type thing that doesn't involve career and work and consistency and facing your own internal challenges and resistances. Is a huge part of this career that isn't the same in other careers. So I have a lot to say, but I want to hear from Faisal too.
I love that. And I want to add another problem to this, because we don't have enough problems. So think about it. So you brought in engineering. I came from that world too. When you're starting out as an engineer, and we've talked about this in some of the podcasts, your first instinct is not, I'm going to jump in and build a business. You might have the desire, just like, one day I'm going to invent something and I'm going to create something. A lot of engineers do. But your first instinct is, and the direction is also, is go get a job as an engineer and work under, in the way at least professional engineering in Canada works, is that you need to work under a professional engineer for at least, I think, 3 years before you can take your professional engineering exam, and then you can be recognized as a professional engineer. It takes about close to 4 years.
You can't even call yourself an engineer. You're not allowed to use the word engineer.
Yeah, you can't call yourself a professional engineer unless you've gone through that. So after 5-6 years of schooling, then another 3-4 years of actually internship, in a sense, to go through that career path. Now, here's the challenge here. Now, coaches, this path does not exist for coaches a lot. It can exist. There are companies who hire. We are hiring coaches, but it's not so widespread where coaches can just put in their resume and look for jobs. They can. There are companies that, so I will, this is one of the paths. It could be that you work as a contractor for another company. I know growth hires. We're hiring coaches. On the larger end, Tony Robbins is another company. They are hiring coaches. So
but even corporations are starting to hire coaches too on salary or contract. So,
but it's still in such an initial stages, but you cannot compare it to something like engineering or another career like that. So when you look at it from that lens, you're not just developing a career path, you're building 2 career paths at the same time. There's business and there's coaching. If you're in this to build a business. Now, think about how hard that is.
In a world where there isn't that professional development around it already established, right? It's like such an uphill battle.
So have we scared off a bunch of people enough? Or
If you're still watching,
if you're
you
still
might
with
be
us,
committed to this career, right? And that's what we want. We want people like you in the industry who are committed to the career, right?
Yeah. We talk with a lot of coaches who identify themselves as dabblers, and it makes a lot of sense because the coaching career path is not well defined. That's exactly what I hear Faisal saying, is that there is not this yellow brick road path that we can easily see and choose to follow. There's a lot of challenges, and with any amount of freedom, there's a lot of joy and opportunity at freedom, but there's also a lot of oppressive freedom, because you have to now make the decisions that if you're in another career field, you wouldn't have to necessarily make, because somebody, the normal path is already laid out. And so if you're a dabbler, if you're not really sure, maybe coaching, maybe not, that's okay. It's totally okay. But my encouragement to you would be, figure that out, put time and energy into figuring it out and making a decision one way or the other. Because if you spend time and energy on moving forward as a coach, but you're not entirely sure that you actually want to make your career out of this, what I've seen is it's kind of a waste, because you're not going to get traction. And then you're already going to it's like you're making the decision without making the decision. I'm just going to dabble a little bit, and it's not going to go well. And then you're going to see, well, because it didn't go well, that means I shouldn't have done it. It's an obvious sign, when it's really not a sign. It's just the result of not really giving it the full energy. And so, but figure it out. Talk with lots of coaches. We have conversations. We connect coaches with each other so that they can have conversations about what's coaching like. Like, do that research so that you can make a full decision and jump in with both feet if that's the decision that you ultimately make.
Sheri, you're really saying the difference between, are you interested or are you committed? Because we often jump into careers without a lot of thought. And you're in high school. It's like, what are you going to be when you grow up, all along your entire childhood? It's like, yeah, I don't know. I'll try this thing. Like, don't just try it. Don't be just interested. Be committed. Decide whether it's for you and take the time to do that, right? I love that, Sheri. But what does all this have to do with marketing, right? Like, this is an important conversation that we're having. Let's talk about marketing, because that's what our topic is today.
So just hold off on that.
Okay, I'll wait. Okay, not yet. Hang on.
And this, we haven't explicitly said what the number one rule is around marketing. It's not just around marketing, but we'll talk about specifically about marketing. The number one rule is to look at this as a marathon, not as a sprint. Look at this as a career to develop, not as something that you're going to make money in 3 months or 6 months. When you look at it from that lens, it completely changes everything. It means that, for example, when I realized that, when I literally not only said it in my head, but said it out loud, that I'm committed, I'm going to make this happen, even if it takes 10 years. When I remember myself saying that, when I said that, it changed how I showed up on a day-to-day basis. And this is the other element of it. The other element, which comes from the marketing world, and that's the influencer path. Many coaches are also connected to the influencer path, which means that they want to be writers, they want to be speakers, they want to be the seminar leaders, they want to be all sorts of other things within this industry, which are connected. These are lateral industries. Here's the problem. If you don't look at this as a career path, here's what you're going to do. You're going to get it started. You're going to start coaching. After about 3 months, like, I think I should write my book. And then 3 months after that, I think I should get paid as a speaker. So I'm going to go that way. And I'm telling you, because I did this myself, and I hear coaches even to this day saying, having the same narrative in their mind, is that you're constantly switching careers and hoping that you will get paid well in all of these when you don't have skill sets that are solidified in any of them.
You're really talking about going deep, right? Instead of going too wide and scattering yourself in your focus, right?
Yes. And so what does that mean? And I want to make it more specific for coaches. So if you're a coach starting out, more than likely you have another career path or a job or something else along with this. We're not saying dedicate all your time to this, but know that if you have 10 hours, 15 hours left in your week, this needs to be the focus. This needs to be the commitment that you have, that you develop this, not going from one course to another. Let me learn about speaking. Let me learn about this. You can look at it as tools for you to develop yourself as a coach, but it's very different to become a paid speaker versus a paid coach. I speak on stages, but I don't say that I'm a professional speaker. I don't strive to as a professional path as a speaker. But you will talk to a coach and they'll be like, well, I'm a professional speaker and I'm a professional coach. I'm not saying that can't be done. That takes a little bit of time to build. And on top of that, when you look at the leaders in the industry, like Brendan Burchard, all these guys have developed all these career paths. But if you look at their journey, it's like 20 plus years. It's not 5 years, not 3 years, but we want to compress it to 2-3 years. So coming back to the marketing, the reason why your marketing doesn't work because there are all these background thoughts that you haven't, beliefs that you have not dealt with. And so when you put out your marketing message, and the belief from marketers that come into your thinking is like, I should be able to put a couple of posts and I should be able to get clients out of it. That's why it does not work, because you're not looking at it as a marathon. You're not looking at it as building a relationship and trust with your clients, helping them see that you are serious about this. This is what you're there to serve them consistently. And this is why they say in marketing, consistency trumps quality in the beginning, because they need to see you show up day after day.
Absolutely. When I ran my first mastermind, kind of group coaching / mastermind, I think the first time my husband and I were jointly facilitating, the first one that we did, the first session of the whole year was like, I think we had 1 or 2 people. And I think one we had gifted the membership, so she didn't even pay. And the other one we had a significant discount to. So like our monthly income from that mastermind was like nowhere near what maybe our financial potential is in individual coaching, or my husband and what he does in real estate. And so I noticed that really shook me. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Like, is this worth it? I mean, I had all of these thoughts, and I was not looking at that mastermind as an opportunity to develop my skills and abilities in leading a group and creating curriculum and stuff like that long term. That's not how I was looking at it. So my confidence and my perspective was shifted and rocky. But had I done that mastermind with the perspective of, hey, I'm going to do my first one, my first of 20, so I'm going to expect my first one to suck. If I even have one person show up, that's a win. Like, if I had that perspective, it would have been very different. And I think that we approach so many things like this, expecting it to be this wham bam amazing thing right out of the gate, because in our society right now, and I won't go off on a rant on this, but in our society right now, we have such a I need immediate feedback right now. And I think that's totally crept into the coaching space, and one's expectations, my expectations around what I can expect from my efforts.
Yeah, it's not just the thinking of coaches, but it's like the immediate gratification is going to happen. And like when you expect that and you don't get it, it creates a huge barrier to progress, right? If you've talked to 15 people and you think, well, none of these people seem like candidates for coaching, or I don't know where to go with this, it can be pretty deflating. You're like, well, what's the point? It's never going to work. Well, have you talked to 150 people? Have you intentionally tracked them and said, I'm going to follow up with people? Have you been curious enough? Have you built genuine connections with these people? As you can tell, if you're starting to get a little bit like, well, that's a lot, this is going to take time to really build a coaching business, because especially at the beginning, if you're not doing it that way, you're not going to be that confident in your coaching process, because you're just getting started, right? You don't have that much experience. You need to have people on those calls with you so that you can get the experience of coaching, so you can be more confident in the reach outs, knowing that you're helping people. You know, there's like a chicken and the egg almost, where like, I don't feel confident in my results yet to be able to reach out to all these people and ask them, you know, questions that will eventually lead to clients. Like, am I wasting my time? But you also need to do that so you can get them on the calls to get that experience. And so, like, part of the game is to think of this as a marathon. If you spent 10 hours to 20 hours a week just doing that relationship development for long enough, and that's not 2 weeks. If you do it for long enough and you have enough touch points with people and you build those relationships and you make genuine connections, and then you invite them to coaching sessions, and then you make your offers in those coaching sessions, you're eventually going to get your first client, your second client, your third client, right? You're eventually going to get it because you're going to learn every single time you do it. So it's like really hard when people promise, like, you know, it's hard to hear when people promise, so you're going to make all this money really fast in the coaching space for people who don't have experience or just starting out, because there's so much that we need to learn. And so the number one rule of marketing, again, back to it, hint, it's not a sprint. I like that rhyme, actually just came to me. It's a marathon. and so if you're not thinking 6 months to a year out minimum, you're gonna like get unfocused or give up or run out of runway. One of the things that I was very lucky as a coach is I had somebody supporting me. The person who later became my wife, she had income to keep me going, so I could spend years not figuring this out and dabbling way too long. Right? It would almost have been better if I had maybe a little less time, because then I could really focus on this marathon thinking.
Yeah.
So,
And just to add to what Daniel said, like Daniel described the process of how you build your network and relationships, which is a business skill. It's not, it's within the coaching world. This would not even be a challenge if you had a contract. If this was an actual job, you would just show up and do the sessions. And you would build relationships, of course, but keep in mind, again, going back to it, you're building business skill sets and you're building coaching skill sets. This is why our community is focused on both of these. We're helping coaches build coaching mastery and business mastery. There are no communities right now, as far as we know it, that focus on both of these. Most of the communities on the business program side, they focus solely on business. And the ones who are on the coaching side, they're usually certifications. That's very short term, max a year usually. Sometimes it's a 2-year certification. Now universities are developing it, the 3-year diploma or something like that. It's coming around in colleges and universities too. But when you're looking at it from a uniqueness of our community, we actually help our clients in coaching mastery community develop skill sets around coaching. So how you support your clients, so how you develop your product and service into something that people want to pay higher ticket for, and also your skill sets in business. Both of them are incredibly difficult to build to a level that's marketable in the market space. And this is what coaches underestimate. So if you want to accelerate that journey, this is why you need an ecosystem, a community like Coaching Mastery Community, where that we help you in that journey that Danielle described. Like when you go out there and reach out to clients, when you connect with them, when you go through that journey, you will eventually learn. But what will help you learn faster is if you get feedback from professionals who've been there, who've done it, also professionals who are doing it right now, and some who are behind you. That is the kind of ecosystem that you need. And again, reiterating this is that look at it as a decade-long career vocation at development of that. And then when you're marketing, look at it as at least, like Daniel said, a year-long approach, that this is going to take some time for you to build trust and connection with an authority with your potential clients. When you look at it like that, things completely shift. You start to invest in different things than you used to. And most coaches that I know, they will go invest in these arbitrary programs around, let me learn more about marketing in general. Let me learn more about business or speaking in general. You'll stop doing that. You will start to invest on this career path, which is very different than just buying a bunch of courses. And you don't just go invest in courses, you need to apply it. And that's why our community is so much focused on implementation, that we don't just give you material information, we get you to implement it, and we ask you for feedback and commitment and challenge you to grow in that path, because it is difficult. And I want to spend a couple of minutes, unless Sheri and Daniel want to add something, a couple of minutes after this, sharing a little bit about the potential of this career path, because that potential needs to be addressed. We talked about the challenges, but what is the potential if you do apply yourself and actually commit to this?
I want to hear that, but I want to hear from Sheri first, because I can see that you got so much going on in your face. So I want to hear what are you thinking, Sheri?
So what comes to mind is we want to be such an amazing coach to our own clients. And this is an opportunity for us to take our own medicine or to listen to ourselves. If you were working with a client and they were getting frustrated and abandoning every idea that they ever came up with because it didn't work in 2 to 4 weeks, how would I coach them? I wouldn't say, oh, you're right, this is so not the opportunity. No, I would help them understand if this opportunity makes sense in your life, your time, all of these things in your vision, then stick with it, find support, stick with it. And yet we're not necessarily taking that advice ourselves. We're getting frustrated. So if you can be your own coach for a minute and remind yourself that if this is worth doing, it's worth putting a lot of time and energy and looking at it long term.
Yeah. I love that. And this is why one of the things that we believe in our community is that coaches need coaches, because you're gonna get stuck in this area. You will get frustrated. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You will get overloaded. You're building too many skill sets all at once. That's why your first year or maybe even two will look like a mess, because and this is a universal principle. You need to create chaos for you to create order. You need to start with chaos to create order. Some people like me create a little bit too much chaos, but
But you're making a really good point, right? The chaos actually, it's more like if you don't know what you're doing, you do experiments and you figure out, the data tells you like this works, this doesn't work. But sometimes you can draw the wrong conclusions because you don't know, you don't have enough data, or you don't understand the mechanism or the cause for the data you're receiving. It could be this, but it could be that. And so you have to run more experiments. You have to figure out like what's actually happening. And having, not only do you need a coach, but you also need colleagues, right? You need a coach and you need colleagues, because that's what you tell your clients, right? You need an ecosystem around you. And, you know, it's really important to have external perspective and support and accountability around the chaos that you almost necessarily have to create in order to figure out what the filtering mechanism for your coaching business is going to look like, so that you can create that order, right?
So let me leave, before we kind of jump into what Faisal said, let me just leave everybody with a metaphor. The coaching business is like a puzzle. You know, you get the box and then you have to dump it out and it's like all a mess. You have to figure out, okay, you got to get them all the right side up. And then you have to figure, like, that's what the coaching business is. There is not a one, you know, we don't get the puzzle already done. There's a million pieces and we get to put them together. And so that's the journey. And if you can recognize that that's what you're jumping into, that will help so much.
And at first that puzzle is double-sided and edgeless.
It's
one
there is no picture for you to follow.
Exactly. It's true actually, because everybody's coaching business is going to be different. Mine is very different from Sheri's, and Sheri's is very different from Faisal's, and Faisal's is very different from mine. We have very different kind of setups for our businesses. It's what has happened over time as we brought our own order to our own chaos, right? And that's taken years and years. Definitely. You know, so okay, Faisal, back to what you were going to say.
Okay, so I'm just going to touch on this, and maybe we can continue this in the next podcast episode about the potential, and this is what marketers are actually talking about. They just don't talk about the context in the middle, is they're talking about the potential of this path. So here's the potential. So for example, if I were to just speak to my development, and everybody can talk about that too, is that when I started out, my thinking was like, man, if I just make 50 or 60K, I'm good. Like as a starting point, I'll feel good, and at least I'll be happy. I'm not selling my soul for a career that will give me a bunch of money. I will actually enjoy the process. I will develop myself, and maybe at some point I'll make 100K. Whenever, I didn't have a lot of expectation around it, but when I got to that, I saw that the power of coaching was that it completely changed lives. That, like, I can't oversell that. It's such a powerful path where you actually get to support people, individuals, families, communities, organizations, that you can completely. And I think coaches have a huge purpose in the design of human society right now, and that. And it might sound egotistic coming from me, but it's not just me. But I mean, coaches who are really at the forefront of this, they're actually supporting leaders, communities, families, organizations. It's changing the narrative out in the world in deeper ways than you think. But just going through that journey, at some point I realized, holy shit, the potential for this is incredible if I really committed from a financial piece, not just from a purpose piece. And the financial piece is that within the past decade, I've already gone past $1 million. And that's exponentially growing. At this point, I'm at 300,000, close to 300,000 a year. And by the way, this is a really high income bracket. And to hit that within a decade, and also for the exponential growth of that, very, very few careers out in the world exist like that, because you're combining a career path with a business model, which completely changes the game. But if this was just a career path where you got paid a certain amount, there will be a cap on it. The cap is related to what kind of effort and what kind of lifestyle you want to create out of this, and what kind of purpose and motivation you have behind it. But at this point, for me, I don't I don't see it slowing down. I'm seeing this exponentially growing, and actually not necessarily, and that's the other thing. If I was in another career, my responsibilities and the work that I would do would increase with it. But that's not what's happening. I'm building systems around me. I have people around me. I'm creating the design around me, and I'm around other communities. So when I look at it, the one that's close to me, I work with real estate investors. It's it's equivalent to a real estate path, if you can think of it that way, if you build the right system in place. Because right now I have coaches who are working where I'm making money right now. I have a bunch of coaches that are delivering sessions right now where I'm not doing anything. That is a path, and you can reinvest that money into other places. So the career path is that you could potentially make millions out of this if you applied yourself into this, not in a year, not in 2 years, make it a long-term path. And this is something Alex Hormozi talks about. He's like, if I promise you that in a decade you're gonna be a millionaire from this, versus you're gonna take a few $100,000 next year, what would you take? It's like, just consider that, like, if this path gives you not only a path to, if that's what you're seeking, not everybody's gonna have that motivation, but let's say you just want a stable career path that's fulfilling, that's purposeful, that can be had with this path. But the potential for it is really high if you combine it with a business model.
Yeah, what I like about what you're saying is like it really contrasts it with a traditional career where you continue to grow in responsibility, but what you don't grow if you're an engineer or whatever, if you're working in the corporate, for example, you don't grow in, unless this is your job, in marketing and sales and business building. And you can learn about business. You can understand, like, when I was an IT manager for General Motors, I was thinking about budgets, but I wasn't really thinking about, like, where does the money come from? My customers were handing to me. Like, I was, customers within the company, or even if you're working with customers outside the company, they're coming through a funnel that's been built by somebody that's designed that, right? And in the coaching world, when you leave, it's like, when you leave corporate, if that's where you started, you're thinking like, oh, how hard could it be? But it's a business that you're building. You're building the next corporation or company that the potential is infinite, because that's like the potential of business, right? Like when you become an entrepreneur, it's all about what value can you create? What systems can you put in place? How can you build this business machine that ideally creates real value and makes a difference and makes enough income to be sustainable or to grow, right? And so when you take off the corporate structures, all of a sudden there's no structure. There's zero structure. You have to build all the structure yourself. And when you come from a structured job, it's really hard to do everything and structure it and learn about business and learn about taxes and learn about accounting and bookkeeping and marketing and outreach. There's so much more that you are now responsible for as a business owner, which is one of the reasons that I think contract coaching or getting a job as a coach or a job where coaching is part of it can be a very powerful path to gaining experience and money to make the long-term sustainability of having a business worth it. And having a business is not for everybody. It's like, it's totally legit. And I've changed my mind on this. When I first started out, I was like, oh, you're only a real coach if you are a coach who has their own business, who builds their own marketing. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you're doing the work of coaching in the world and changing people's lives or businesses or whatever it is that you're coaching them on, health or whatever it is, if you're doing that work, you're a real coach. Like whatever way that looks for you, that's right for your life, is your choice. So you can choose what you want to do. And so building a business is not the only way, but it's a way that I like because of the infinite potential that Faisal is talking about, right? Because when I left my 6-figure corporate job, I ended up in a 0-figure non-corporate unbusiness as a coach for a while. It took a long time. So
awesome. So if all this whole conversation is getting you excited and motivated, you're like, yeah, I do want to make this a long-term commitment. Yeah, I do want to be a coach. I want to give this my full energy. I don't want to wuss out because the first or second or third thing doesn't feel like it worked. If that's getting you excited, that's what we hope to do. So 2 calls to action. One is register for the marketing masterclass, because that will give you a little extra traction on what to do now that's going to work. We're talking about marketing is a marathon. However, you might be in the position where like, but I kind of need a client now. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the things that can help you get traction now. It's just a small piece of the big marketing picture, but we're focusing on that small piece. So again, #masterclass. And if you're listening to this like way after when we're doing this live, that's okay. You can still get the replay from the masterclass. And so we've got some of that stuff available, so you can still reach out for that. And secondly, if you're like, yeah, I recognize I'm really struggling, that I'm not at the mindset of perseverance, of grit, of just keeping on because I know it's going to work. If you're struggling with that, join our community. The first step is just going into our Facebook group and joining that Coaching Mastery Community. Search for it as a group on Facebook, and you can jump in for free and then go from there. And we'd love to see you there.
So type in #masterclass below this video, or go to coachingmasterycommunity.com and click register for the masterclass.
Yeah, even if it's been passed, because we can share the recording with you afterwards. And make sure you share this video, like it, and share it with another coach who's a friend, who's somebody that you've learned to develop a relationship with. And also watch one of the videos on our channel after this too. Until our next conversation, hope you have an incredible day. Bye.
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 You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.